and welcome to The Society with Barrister Fatma Shaheen at PTV World. They say that the only commonality amongst human traffickers is the fact that they all lose their personal freedom. Whether it's poverty, whether it's, naturally placed disasters, whether it's war for that matter, or whether it's social and cultural norms in different countries and different societies, we need to understand that what are the root causes of human trafficking. And in this regard, we must also mention at the very outset that when we talk about human trafficking, this is not something which is just limited to Pakistani society. This is in fact something which extends to the entire world. It is organized global crime. What all is the Pakistani government, what all is the Pakistani civil society, and what all is the law enforcement generally doing in order not only to combat human trafficking but also to timely prevent and detect it. This and much more we are going to be talking about in our today's show, and to do that, let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist here with me today is Ms. Sabahat Noor, who is the in-charge immigration officer at the Lahore airport. She is also the former investigation officer of the cybercrime wing Lahore. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, and thank you for having me on your show.
You're most welcome. My second panelist for the show is Ms. Nadia Kashif, who's a coordinator of a migrant resource center. Assalamu alaikum, Nadia, and welcome to the show.
Walaikum assalam, Fatima, and thank you very much for having me over today.
You're most welcome. And my third panelist via telephone line is Ms. Afshan Tehseen, who is the chairperson of National Commission on the Rights of Child. Assalamu alaikum, madam, and welcome to the show.
Walaikum assalam, Fatma. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
You're most welcome, madam. Madam, I would like to start the show with you. You know, we all understand the fact that when we talk about human trafficking, it is a global issue. And when we talk about this global issue, we understand that, there are some countries which unfortunately happen to be the source of origin for it. Then there are some which are used as transits to actually conduct human trafficking, and then some which actually end up being destination countries for human trafficking. So in whatever context we may do consider it, what are the common patterns of human trafficking that you see in all these cases?
One of the most important topics, particularly in the backdrop of COVID-19, but before sharing the causes of it, it's important to share the definition. It would be good for people to know that human trafficking is the process of trapping people through the use of violence, deception, coercion, exploitation, merely for the gains of financial benefits or the personal gains. And as we all know that only those people are victims of trafficking who are vulnerable, who are poor, who have no awareness, and they are easy to trap, and particularly who are in search of good jobs. And that's why people having no knowledge about it can be very easily trapped into these type of tricks by people who are the mafias, who are various organized crime groups, and who can lure them and in the guise of, at times child labor, sexual exploitation, modern day slavery.
Even madam, according to the UN definition, even removal of organs for that matter as well, because the definitions as we see, they vary country to country, they vary organizations to organizations. So I think that is something which is very expansive, but it's very good that at the very outset, you've told everybody that what should the basic definition of human trafficking actually, have in it. But when we talk about this, madam, I agree with you that there are people who are more vulnerable to it, and of course we all understand that way women, children, and marginalized sections of the Pakistani society or any other society where it is happening, they are more vulnerable to it. But then what about people, in countries like Africa, we see that people are at times born into that, a system of servitude.
Definitely, then the risk increases, it multiplies by many folds. And as you mentioned, that organ trafficking is definitely on the rise. Though people have difficulties in terms of their mobility to other countries due to travel restrictions because of COVID-19, but now people are using social media and other, networks and other such technologies to contact people, to engage people, because these days it's the third year almost people are being affected by COVID-19, people are losing jobs, people have no business, people are under debt, and so lots of people are getting into this type of exploitation.
Exactly, madam, your point is noted, but coming to you, Ms. Sabahat, I think you would want to add to this because you have a very different kind of an experience from that of madams. You have that benefit of working with, real life possible human traffickers, be it at the airport if you spot them, or for that matter through your other field experience, so to speak. So do you feel that, poverty is the largest contributor to human trafficking? And I'm just not talking about Pakistan, I'm talking about, world over.
Fatima, look, poverty, economic reasons are the most important reason in our country and all over the world. But if we look at the trends that we see, unemployment is the main important reason. Then the youth with meager education, they have limited resources to get to a good employment in Pakistan. They travel. They are more likely to travel abroad, and most importantly via illegal means.
And I think that is something which Madam also pointed out, that
Yeah.
COVID-19 has actually worsened the situation for everybody, because you see, I think it's not just youth, it's generally people, because it has lost, you know, so many people have lost so many jobs. So any good opportunity they see, they would just want to, you know, go
People
grab
are
it.
more frustrated these
Right.
days due to the COVID restrictions. COVID restrictions are in our country as well as abroad.
Would you agree with what she's saying, or would you have a different narrative? Because your scope of work is completely different that way. You're there to educate people about, you know, their safe migration options. So do you feel that, you know, is it just lack of education which pushes people into, you know, being victims of human trafficking?
I do agree with that, all the factors like Madam has indicated as well as Sabahat has mentioned. But if to just club it under the one umbrella, that you can see that all the illegal and irregular migration, they both are basically led by gaining financial, you gain a financial prosperity. Our youth is very much into this. There are certain other reasons also involved into this, which while interacting with the communities, we have learned through the platform of MRC as well. Those aspirant migrants who are looking for like job opportunities, and they are also not having a kind of good education with them, they are very vulnerable toward the informal networks working within the areas. So lack of knowledge, lack of information is basically also one of the other reason through which which basically require more awareness raising, and we are working on it.
Right, Nadia, point is noted. But coming to you, Madam, as chairperson of NCRC, why do you, you know, believe that women and children, or for that matter, anybody who's a marginalized section of the society, is more vulnerable to human trafficking as opposed to any other person?
Thank you very much, Padma. First of all, let me just elaborate a difference between trafficking in persons and migrant smuggling.
Right.
Trafficking, as I mentioned before, is a process where you exploit others, where you trap others, where you maybe threat others, where you misguide others and mislead others, and by force you get them into sexual exploitation or labor, or on farms, on other factories, or maybe households and wherever. Trafficking can be within the country as well as cross-border. Whereas migrant smuggling means you facilitate, like the mafia facilitates people illegally to transport them from one place to another. So in both cases, in terms of trafficking, if I say the more emphasis is always women and children, they are mostly affected because they are young, they are easy to negotiate, they can be threatened easily, they don't have just like males or adults strength, they are strong enough, their exploitation is easy. Also, this is something very, very common, I must say. And in terms of traffickers or migrant smugglers, the male ratio is more who are smuggling these women, children, or young people, or maybe.
Madam, that's very rightly pointed out by yourself, but why do you feel they are more easier targets compared to other people? Because, we have also seen, interestingly enough, that women themselves have also perpetrated such crimes, especially, women have turned out to be drug traffickers as well.
Women are never alone, they are always part of the network. But overall, if you see, women and children are always more vulnerable. Physically weak, mentally weak, in terms of power they are weak, they are easy to, exploit, easy to handle. That's why they are always easy victims. And on the other hand, why women and children? Because they can be exploited very easy. Young kids, you use them anywhere, you have less, threats of anything, because as compared to men or the young men, that's why their ratio is much more as compared to men in terms of trafficking. And overall, if you see vulnerabilities, household family sizes, there are many people who are poor, vulnerable. They are always very easily sending their children, their young daughters for jobs, for any economic opportunities. in guise of that they will have their get their life better, but otherwise they're always being exploited.
Right, madam, and in this regard, I would also want to add that there have been cases where women themselves have also emerged as perpetrators of such crimes, and often women themselves being, first victimized because of this crime, and then in turn, being part of organized gangs that way. So I think we should also consider the fact that where they are more vulnerable, there have been cases, even if they have been few, they have also emerged to be perpetrators of such crimes, because we have to see this whole argument in its entirety, which takes me to you. I think madam has principally pointed out the vulnerabilities of women, children, and other marginalized sections of the Pakistani society or any other society, why they are more vulnerable towards human trafficking. But coming to you, Sabat, I think it's very important for us to take your practical narrative from you in this way. Tell us about some interesting case which you were able to identify, in the course of your work, of working, of course, as the in-charge immigration officer.
Fatima, when we look at the Pakistani society, people from central Punjab and all around the smaller districts of Punjab, they send their children abroad in quite a younger age. When I have come across a particular incident when a female, she was aged woman, she was carrying 2 children, minors, along with her. They were her grandchildren, and the agent, the person who was involved in trafficking, smuggling that people across the border, had clubbed a teenager with them. In this way, because at the immigration checkpost, we don't usually put the families into a scrutiny of going through a rigorous process of interviewing. So agents.
What made you actually stop and do that? Because what was the red flag? Because from my experience, of being a traveler, I think it's rare in Pakistan, at least I haven't seen many people being stopped to be screened. While, if you compare it with the Western world, especially the US, I think their checks are more rigorous.
There are many checks at immigration checkposts. First of all, we look at the purpose of the visit, what the passenger is going to do in the abroad. Either he is going for a business visa, either he is going for a tourism perspective. So in this scenario, we look at the profile, we look at the socio-economic background of the passenger, traveler. Then most importantly, that every person should know that we look at the biodata page of the passport.
Right.
If we see from which district of Pakistan the person is hailing. If he is hailing from Gujarat, if he is hailing from Gujranwala, Central Punjab, then we mostly scrutinize that person with a greater depth.
Right. But Sabat, what happened in this particular case, the case that you were able to successfully identify, and I hope that you did take the traffickers to task in that way. So what made you actually question them and stop them and interrogate them, and what happened?
It was totally a different family. A aged woman in her late 50s was carrying 2 children who were 4 years and 6 years, maximum 6 years of age, and she was also having a 16-17 years old boy along with her. So this is a kind of different family which is different from other families who are traveling in a very casual way. So in this way, we questioned them, we interviewed them, and we came to know that the teenager is not blood relative of the female.
So he was possibly the trafficker. Okay, with them basically
being trafficked by the agent.
But wouldn't it have been difficult to extract all these details from the children? Because children it's difficult to get details out of them, because I would want to think that it's very easy to manipulate them, and whoever these traffickers are, I think they put them in so much fear that even if you want to, it's difficult to get the details out.
But Fatima, when we look into the technicalities that we have at immigration checkpost, we are having access to the NADRA. We check their parentage, we check their family tree, and if we are confident that the family is having a blood relation, then
so that's how basically you got hold of them, and that was the giveaway, the FRC, that is the Family Registration Certificate. Nadia, would you want to add something to that, like in your experience, because I know your work is different that way. You are there to make people aware about safe migration, and of course to also discourage irregular migration. But what scams do you see people falling prey to in your work?
Fatima, since we are directly interacting mostly with the aspirant migrants or those who are just thinking of going abroad or planning to go abroad, so in this way, these people, when they connect back with us and the clients which we came across, They usually reach us out for information, and that information is mostly related to like getting to know about the work visa information, getting to know about the immigration processes, and even sometime, many a time, there are clients who wanted to know about the study kind of visa process, and ultimately they wanted to fly to country for
So
work
basically,
purpose.
you people have
So
also been a victim of such scams. Basically, you've been lied to as well, although you are the one guiding them that way.
yes, there are people like who are reaching us out, in an indirect way. They actually wanted to know information about the work visa, but they, apparently they'll be asking us about the study kind of information. So there are like aspirant migrants who are basically deceiving in this way as well.
And I think they are doing themselves a disadvantage,
Yes,
because
this
if
is-
they would just ask you straight away that, listen, this is our purpose of travel, this is the guidance we need, you would be able to guide them in a more informed manner, of course, which would
Exactly.
help them, from falling possibly prey to human trafficking cases. Okay, one very interesting question when I was working, on this show, which I thought I would ask you when you would come on the show itself, that is your work just limited to guiding these people, or does it also extend to, giving them help when they have reached their destination country? Because you see, it might be the case that from here you've put somebody on board, they've successfully reached their destination place, but there they possibly might, fall into a trap by human traffickers. So is there any mechanism by which you can extend that help to them?
Actually, Fatima, our overall Migrant Resource Center is a project that's mostly about raising awareness on safe and informed migration, and also making people aware about the risk and dangers associated with irregular migration. Within country, of course, there is a support mechanism offered by the government, different departments of the government, and we do connect our clients over there in case of they are falling any scam. We connect them with the relevant government authorities. But if some overseas client connect us through any social media platform, or they will reach us out through our helpline service, we do connect them with the relevant authorities over there. Like we connect them with the CWAs, community welfare attachés placed by the government of Pakistan in the destination countries.
So you do help them out,
yes.
at least connecting them to the relevant government authorities that way. Coming to you, madam, I would like to talk about your work of the commission itself, because one of the powers of the commission is very specifically to inquire into violation of child rights and recommend to the relevant agency or department initiation of proceedings in such cases. So since the time that you have, been appointed the chairperson of NCRC, how many such cases have you actually referred, to the relevant departments for them to, in order to initiate proceedings in them?
The Commission has an oversight and monitoring roles in terms of legislative reforms and institutional reforms, awareness raising, handling complaints mechanism, including child labor, trafficking, and also, international compliance. So, Commission being very new, started working on the various issues of child protection and child rights. And starting with child abuse being the rising issue in Pakistan, we definitely took direct actions in terms of writing to the law enforcement agencies whenever Commission received any complaints on cases of child abuse, which include child sexual abuse, child labor, early marriages, forced conversion, abduction, etc., etc. Along with that, we have also, issued various recommendations to the provincial government, to the chief secretary, to the concerned parliamentary committees, to the ministries.
Right, madam, and I think in this regard we must also, give you due credit for raising this issue of child marriage and also advocating for the same cause in terms of, wanting to have the age of girls raised to 18 years and also making the provision of NIC mandatory. So how do you feel will that directly or indirectly, help us curb this social menace of human trafficking, at least at a local level?
I think this is something very, very important, and harmonization of age in all the laws in Pakistan is one of the issues which we need to focus upon, so that we should have a standard operating procedures as compliant to the United Nations Conventions which we have signed or ratified. And as per standards, each boy or girl are declared up to 18 years of age as child. So having said that, if you see the pattern, and there was a scandal also, last year and a few months back, that lots of people were trying to engage young girls and women into, this trap of marriages, and then they were transporting them and using them into sex industry and for other sexual exploitation business and other practices. So this is something very important, because until and unless we will not be focusing on children and proper legislation for having 18 years of age in all the laws available in Pakistan, they will continue to get affected. And in terms of 18 years of age, they should not get married before they attain, puberty, according to the, any prevailing law or the, international legislation which we have ratified.
I think in this regard, madam, you've also been very actively working on child labor per se. But when we talk about child labor, it's very important for us to draw on the distinction between child labor as it stands and child development. So because of course the fight is against child trafficking, it's not against child development. So what all is NCRC doing, or what all can we expect from NCRC in this regard, especially when it comes to creating awareness about the same amongst the Pakistani masses?
First of all, let me just tell you, child development means holistic development of a child in terms of a positive personality. A child should be safe from exploitation, from neglect, from any type of abuse, and from all those practices which are harmful for his or her upbringing or positive development. NCRC is now working on the recommendations to be given to the federal and provincial government. Side by side, we have a key focus on awareness raising. We are direct in contact with FEMRA, held various meetings. We have recently engaged Goodwill Ambassador Asad Khan, is a very known name, who is a very strong advocate to talk on the issues of child abuse, child exploitation. So people are now slowly and gradually focusing on this area, because we have to make it a main focus, because children are face of any country.
It's a very intelligent move on part of you, NCRC, to engage celebrities on board and have them as your goodwill ambassadors, because I think when such movements, when such causes are endorsed by celebrities, they have a greater impact. And in that regard, madam, what is very important to highlight here is also the fact that the National Action Plan to Combat Human Trafficking, that itself is also been launched, and NCRC along with other stakeholders is working very diligently on that. So what are the proposals of this National Action Plan, and how do we see it translating into action?
NCRC, being very new commission, has recently become part of the National Action Plan, and definitely it is led by all the key stakeholders like law enforcement agencies, FIA, all international organizations, UNODC, and other key players who have a role to save people from trafficking and migrant smuggling. And up till now, both the governments and the donors and other stakeholders have been focusing upon strengthening the internal system, strengthening the referral mechanism. National Plan of Action has all those key components, and I'm glad that concerned authorities are taking them very seriously. And again, the cyber crime and other such issues are also becoming part of it.
Nadia, NCRC is working in its own capacity to create awareness, but when we talk about awareness per se, I know that you have also been working very diligently on that, both in terms of counseling people and creating mass media awareness. So how do you go about it? What is the typical process of your counseling any potential migrant? Is it like something which is which starts from before they migrate? Is it something which can start in the middle of the process of migration? How does it all work out?
Fatima, when at Migrant Resource Center, we provide counseling to someone, to our clients. We basically one of its kind of center which is providing information at pre-migration phase. We counsel the clients on all the steps involved in migration process. When client reaches us out, we basically assess their skill set, their education level, and their experience, and the opportunities which they can avail. And of course, we refer them toward the government available opportunities, like we refer them to the BEOE website, that's Bureau of Overseas Employment website. There are lots of G2G jobs are available over there. We also like guide our potential clients on the process involved in migration, like the steps they have to take toward during the process, and like
what are the most common queries that you come across in the process of migration? Because I know that you only help them to the extent of guiding them, and of course that's what you can do. You can't help them get the visa that way.
Of course.
But what are the trends that you notice, and what are the most common questions that people have? And personally, I was seeing this report which suggested, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's this trend of people wanting to immigrate to GCC countries more as opposed to Eastern Europe or Europe generally. So is that correct?
There are two trends. In terms of legal migration, I would say like mostly our labor class or skilled workers, they have opportunities to work in GCC countries. And those who are unskilled, or are less educated, I would say, they have more of kind of aspiration to go to European countries.
So it's very good that the scope of your services is just not limited or narrowed down to the potential migrant. It also extends to the family members that way. But in this regard, what are the trends that you notice? Because I was going through this report which suggested that young male persons are very vulnerable to falling victim to irregular migration. So do you agree with the findings of this report?
Well, to some extent, definitely those who are going abroad, they are basically age ranging between 16 years to 35 years if they are going for a work purpose. And mostly like Government of Pakistan, they have government to government manpower supply contract with Gulf countries. That's why most of our legal migration or labor migration, I would say, from Pakistan is going toward GCC countries. Whereas irregular migration, it's basically all those who are illiterate or uneducated and who do not have access to these legal avenues. They have kind of aspiration of going abroad. And with these aspiration and dreams, and by following the success stories,
and following the wrong agents as well.
Of course, there are informal networks.
I think part of your awareness campaigns should encompass the agents as well, because they have such big networks. They are the ones who are misleading, and I think in this regard, when we talk of cracking them down, when we talk about human trafficking being an organized crime, agents are the people that we need to get after too. Would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, I'd like to add to this point that Nadia has pointed out. I have working on airport, I have seen rise in trend of going to GCC countries, because their visa policies are very easy, and people first visit there, then they get their employment over there, and then they come back with valid visa papers. So there is no difficulty for them to travel to and fro. And if we talk about the European countries, yes, they have stringent visa policies. First, they let you to be a part of the asylum to go through the asylum procedure, and then they give you a proper citizenship, and even it takes years.
Basically, the visa policy is more stringent, which is why people choose to go to GCC countries. It's an easier bet for them that way. But I do understand the fact that you've also been working as an investigation officer at the cybercrime wing. So in your experience of working as a female investigation officer, what kind of cases have you come across? Because Sabahat, I do feel that we should just not limit the scope of this discussion to traditional and offline human trafficking. We should extend it to cyber trafficking as well, because now, as we see, this is like a chain which is running through.
Cybercrime is a very thriving crime in Pakistan. The world has become a global village, and our youth is now becoming a part of that village, but without proper guideline and without looking into the privacy policy.
Cyber crimes as well as cyber trafficking both, because of course both are interlinked that way.
Yes, our youth is not looking into the privacy policy, and they are not taking due care of the procedures that they must. With the cyber crime, they use the Facebook pages that are mostly fake, WhatsApp groups. They add people, they lure people into giving them a good job opportunity abroad. They ask them for minimum. At first, they'll ask for a minimum amount to getting them to have an employment. In cybercrime, we have come across cases in which female are being exploited. The transnational agents, they hire the female by, first of all, they blackmail them. They get their objectionable material in the form of pictures and videos. then they blackmail them, and then they recruit them to work for them, and in this way this chain continues.
But adding to that, Sabahat, I know you've also had, that advantage and that benefit of successfully prosecuting quite a few of such cases as well. So what kind of cases were they? Were they cases of blackmailing? Were they cases of cyber harassment or even cyber defamation?
You have exactly pointed out all the details. The cases related to female are mostly of blackmailing at first, then they often extort money, then they try to blackmail them, because in our society female are the weak segment, and they are the fear of being stigmatized and at the same time being left alone by the family, so they don't report such cases.
But in that regard, Ms. Sabahat, you have been able to successfully prosecute this case of a female, you were telling me. So tell us about that case. So, people who are watching the show, they get motivated to come forward with their own cases if they are subjected to, this form of trafficking or cyber crimes.
Working in cybercrime, there was a case when a female was trafficked abroad by an agent. The agent lured her to work in sexual exploitation, and he also had his family blackmailed by sending them her objectionable pictures and videos. The mother of the victim came to us along with her brother, and they reported this thing to our circle. Then we convinced them that their identity is going to be in disguise, and they don't have to worry about all the proceedings at the court. We'll be there. In this regard, the victim came back to Pakistan from country abroad, and we prosecuted her case, and at the end of the day it was resolved.
It was resolved, and I think it's a very important thing to add to this, to which I will come to you as well, that we as women need to be very, we need to encourage women to come forward and report such cases, them being the vulnerable segments. And in this regard, I think witness protection also plays a very important part, and of course victim protection. I think the woman who came to you was that way bold. A lot of other women might not just do that, but he is giving hope to the women that who are unfortunately subjected to such crimes, that they must speak up against it. And in this regard, I would want to come to you, Nadia. I think when we talk about and when we analyze trends, what are the reasons that you see due to which women immigrate as opposed to men? Are the reasons same, or do they differ anyhow?
Women is from Pakistan, if we see in a migration perspective, women are not much into migration.
Okay.
It's not a woman thing over here, I would say.
Until unless it's for marriage, maybe.
Yes, and they're basically going in a second tier kind of thing by marrying someone, being as a daughter, being as a mother. So directly, those who are migrating directly,
even for that matter, wanting to pursue higher studies that way, basically.
For higher studies, and even those who are going for a work purpose, they are quite well knowledgeable and educated women.
And they are less vulnerable to actually fall prey to such human trafficking scams that way.
Yes, of course, I agree with that. They are less vulnerable in this regard because they have information with them.
Right.
They are knowledgeable enough.
Right.
But I would say those, youth, especially illiterate and uneducated, they are more vulnerable.
And I think in this regard, we must of course give you due credit for raising awareness on, irregular and illegal migration, that when you're also working with the government in your own way. But when you look at the role of civil society, how important is the civil society's role in raising awareness on this very pertinent, not only local, in fact global issue here in Pakistan?
Fatima, here I wanted to give credit to you and your team that you guys are working on taking up this topic of trafficking, which is not very well talked about. Civil society, of course, civil society play a very vital role. Like if they take up any awareness raising campaign, like they did in case of like child protection and rights, and look where we are standing. We have laws which can protect the child. And as
so
well
many
as
other
women
issues,
empowerment.
Nadia.
Women empowerment. Of course, our civil society is very much, working side by side with the government and others.
And also media that way, you see, because we have had even dramas basically being produced on this particular issue. When so many other social causes are being covered, even this particular issue has been raised by dramas too. And I think in that regard, I would want to add that's very important that all stakeholders, they come on the same table and they work together, because I think that coordinated action, that is something which will make it more impactful. But coming to you, I believe that FIA is also working and having all these awareness raising workshops. So what is the scope of those workshops, and who all are you engaging in those workshops?
FIA is working in united effort with the United Nations as well as police as well as other sister agencies and
Child Welfare
NGOs,
Protection Bureau,
Child
the
Welfare
Social Welfare
Protection Bureau,
Department.
Exactly. FIA is conducting workshops and seminars. We are developing a female officers pool. Female officers from FIA and police are working in it. 3 to 4 sections have sections of the training have already been completed, and we are looking forward to convey to the general public and masses that that we all are on same table and working towards better.
And also, I think a very important thing, a rather benefit out of these workshops would be the fact that people would also get to know that the provincial police has an important role to play when it comes to human trafficking, especially after the 2018 law, because the general perception, you know, in Pakistan, in quite some people, is the fact that it's just the FIA, you know, which is the relevant agency. What they don't understand is that when this human trafficking, it is committed at a local level, in whatever form it may be, then the provincial police is the one which has jurisdiction to take action.
Yes, according to this Section 8 of the Trafficking in Person Act 2018, police has the sole ambit of dealing with the trafficking which is taking place within the borders. When it comes to the trafficking or smuggling across the border, then FIA comes into action.
Right.
So it is very important to make general public and everyone aware of the fact that police has a very important role to play. We are working to sensitize police in this matter.
Right, sensitize them and people as well, who actually come up with complaints. So tell me about these workshops. Are you also like engaging airline people, airline staff and other airport officers? Because again, at the end of the day, this is a problem in which I think everybody should be involved, because trafficking can, you know, occur at any point. It can occur at the airline, inside the plane. It can occur, you know, when you're going to check in at that junction. So is the airport staff and is the airline staff also being targeted in these awareness workshops?
And Fatima, I have been working on airport and I have seen very concerted all the concerted efforts made by airline, made by the civil aviation and all the agencies, that IB and other agencies that are working on airport. If anyone detects a smuggler or any agent or any carrier who is carrying a female victim or a child, then they must report this to the crew. If it is during the flight operation, then they report this to the crew. In this way, the crew of the airline will report it directly to us, and we have our specific mechanisms so that we can curb this thing.
Right. So you've been telling us about the workshops and, you know, how generally they are targeted at, you know, educating the provincial police, social welfare department, so many other stakeholders that you rightly so pointed out. But when we talk about this, I think a responsibility also lies to educate not only the airline staff but also, you know, other people at the airport itself, whoever they may be, and even the people, you know, who are traveling that way. Because if you are able to rightly so identify a traffic person and report it timely, you can possibly save a life. So in my conclusion, you know, I would like you to guide people that what are the tips you would want to give people in order to rightly so identify such suspected cases, like what are the red flags that they need to look out for as travelers?
On airport, one must consider the red flags. First of all, look at if the underage female is going along with someone who is not looking like a blood relation. And secondly, see if a child is traveling without a proper guardian or without a female factor, his or her mother. At the same time, if you see someone who is not in a proper attire of traveling, is not carrying a proper luggage, so you can report to the authorities, to the airline,
or somebody,
to the
I think, who's generally nervous or maybe panicked when you put questions. Because I think from my experience of dealing with immigration officers, that's the first thing that they see. I think body language is something that never lies. So I'm hoping that these tips that you've given to people, they will, you know, end up being useful. But coming to you and coming towards the conclusion of the show, what would your concluding message be? Because you've been so extensively working on migration. So my concluding question to you would be that, you know, how can we make all the challenges that come with migration opportunities?
It all depends upon your choices. If you are going in a legal way, then definitely you can convert these challenges into an opportunity for yourself. You can excel in your life, you can achieve your dreams. And if you are taking up the wrong way or illegal way to migrate abroad, definitely you are putting yourself in a more vulnerable position, and like those informal networks which are very much active, they can exploit you in somehow or the other. I would also like to just give it a call in terms of like country's perspective, that if host and destination countries, they both look migration as an opportunity, then definitely they need to sit together.
Not only look at it as an opportunity, I think that's a very valid recommendation put by yourself, but also regulate this legally. So, you know, people of these countries, they have a legal mechanism through which they can travel, and they don't end up doing something which is not within the purview of the law. On that note, I would like to conclude today's show. Thank you so much, Ms. Sabahat. Thank you so much, Ms. Nadia, and thank you so much, Ms. Afsha, for being here with us today. Well, to conclude today's show, we spoke at length about human trafficking. We also discussed what all is the law enforcement in Pakistan, what all is the government, what all is the civil society doing in order to combat human trafficking and also to possibly prevent it. What needs to be done is to increase awareness about the same. What needs to be done is also to improve our coordination amongst stakeholders so as to make this fight against human trafficking more effective. And also, most importantly, what needs to be done is also to change those societal attitudes which one way or the other encourage human trafficking, even in the ways it does exist locally in Pakistan. On that note, signing off for today. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.